So we're asking that question, is there factionalism within the education front? Maybe. That's the reading of education think tank, Africa Education Watch, following contradictions in responses provided by the Education Minister and the Ghana Education Service on the Ghana Accountability for Learning Outcome project, GALOP, which is funded by the World Bank. We know that the Minister, Yao Duchum, held a news conference yesterday at which he said his ministry has undertaken the digital literacy training for over 41,000 teachers across the country. For those of you who missed it, here are excerpts.
The mandate was that we needed to train 40,000 teachers in digital literacy. So the Ministry of Education, that is the implementation agency for that component of the funding, embarked on the project of training 40,000 teachers. Platform was created. On that platform, teachers went there and they did the training. At the time that the project was about to come to an end, we had trained over 41,000 teachers. The World Bank then asked the development partners in Ghana to form a consortium and verify if the ministry has really done the work so that they can release the 1.2 million. The development partners then came, looked at the platform, verified the list of people on the platform, and came to the conclusion that the work has been done. They sent me a letter congratulating me for having met the benchmark that they set for us, and therefore wrote to the World Bank to release the 1.2 million so that we can use the 1.2 million to embark of the project that will improve teaching and learning in the GALOP schools. As I speak with you, the amount is sitting in our account, ready to be used for its intended purpose, buying furniture, buying teaching and learning materials, ensuring that in GALOP schools, everything that they need can be done using the 1.2 million. So if anybody is saying anything, all that I want to tell you is that the money was not intended for training. The training was to be supported by us. And once we can show that we have a skin in the game, that we are committed to the transformation of education in GALOP schools, then they will release the money, and that is what they have done. The good news is that the money is sitting in our account as I speak with you today. So, ladies and gentlemen of prayer, nothing can be further from the truth that Dr. Yao Duchum was or pretend over a project that is not going to benefit Ghanaians. It will never be true. I will never do that. I didn't come to this country to do that. I came to help project the president and ensure that his vision for transformation of education is accomplished. So today, as I sit in front of you, I sit with a sober reflection, understanding that you work so hard, and the others who don't care about that. What they care about is to do anything to dent your image. But I want to assure Ghanaians that Dr. Duchum is in their corner. The president is in their corner. We are here to work hard to change education as we know it.
Well, so Africa Education Watch is calling for an independent audit into the matter. They're raising a number of concerns through an official statement which has been released today. We can now bring you excerpts of that statement, which you have on your screens right now, indicating that, first of all, their recommendations is that to put to rest the contention surrounding the digital learning training disclaimer by the GES, and also affirming the institutional credibility of MOE, the World Bank should conduct an independent audit of the training by KA Technologies to establish its scope, relevance, equality, and then reach, and make public its findings. Then they go ahead to talk about another point in the recommendations section of the statement, indicating that to promote transparency and accountability in the management and the implementation of the GALOP project, the Ministry of Education must publish all project-based condition reports, annual implementation progress reports, and also the implementation completion reports of GALOP on its website. And then there's recommendation number 3, talking about the fact that the World Bank, GALOP funding partners, and the Ministry of Education should take advantage of the next implementation phase of GALOP and then support the midterm review and also some existing non-disclosure agreements on GALOP, and commit the Ministry of Education to a more transparent management of GALOP while clarifying institutional rules to avoid conflicts. So these are some of the points they're making, including the fact that the Ministry of Education must focus on its core function of policy implementation and coordination, and also continue to support the Ghana Education Service in policy implementation when required. These are some of the pointers that we're getting from the Africa Education Watch. So let's hear from the group itself. Fortunately, we've been joined now by Kofi Asare, who's the Executive Director for Africa Education Watch. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us. So is the explanation that we're getting from the ministry sitting down well with you, having heard the minister and his explanations? At least we know you're making some recommendations, but first, let's start off from the justification by the sector minister. What's your take on that?
Good afternoon to your audience. The minister's press statement explains the ministry's side of a contentious issue. It doesn't necessarily address the issue of disclaimer the GES Director General made. And so, but that is the side of the ministry in respect of the disclaimer by the GES. It is only an independent body which has no interest in the subject matter, which has no position and trend position that can verify whether or not what the ministry is saying is indeed factual, or what the GES is saying is indeed factual. Note that the two agencies are supposed to work together like twins. One is the principal and the other is the agency. The implementing wing of the Ministry of Education is the GES at the pre-tertiary sector. So the two must be seen to be speaking in unison. When one is speaking a different language from the other, then it raises questions in respect of the varying account of policy implementation. And that is why a neutral body is required, to more or less verify the claim of the GES within the context of the submission of the Ministry of Education for us to put this matter to rest.
Yeah, and some say this was even needless in the first place, having witnessed what we're seeing, a disconnect between a state agency and its supervising sector ministry. That's really strange for that to happen.
It is indeed most unfortunate in the sense that the ministry's job is to formulate policy and coordinate the implementation of same. The GES's job is to implement policy. So they are supposed to work in tandem. The least one would expect would be for the GES to be making pronouncement totally in variance with what the ministry is saying.
Right.
More so when the pronouncement is in respect of the implementation of an activity expected to benefit staff of the GES. So if the GES, being the employer, is not in knowledge, is totally ignorant of a claim by the ministry that certain training has been administered to its staff, then it leaves much to be desired. Because, as I said, the two agencies must be seen to be talking and moving towards a unified direction. But unfortunately, we are having contradicting statements being issued by both agencies, and that is why it is worrying.
And with the recommendations that we're getting from Africa Education Watch, to what end, and particularly what problem will that address? I guess that will be the bigger question, because yes, you're making recommendations, but then what problem will that fix?
At the base of the problem we are discussing is the lack of accountability and transparency in a $218 million project being implemented. And don't forget that World Bank projects are largely loans that the taxpayer is going to pay, largely. There is always a percentage that may go into grants, but the majority of the project is loan. So we are of the opinion that this occurrence is happening because we are having a situation where there is limited accountability and transparency in the management of such a project. If there were reports on GALOP available on the website of the Ministry of Education, if the Ministry of Education had shared reports, implementation completion reports, semi-annual reports, annual reports, and even activity reports of the particular activities in question on GALOP, I'm not sure the GES would have denied knowledge of what is obviously available to the entire public. But unlike the common practice in project management, if you go to the Ministry of Education's website, there's absolutely no report on GALOP. And I'm talking about a project which is worth over 1.5 billion cedis. There's no report on it. So everything is shrouded in opacity. How are we CSOs able to verify, and in this case, come and justify the claim of the ministry and say that we are aware that this activity was conducted on this date, during this period, and it was done ABCD? There's no report. So the first issue is that we need to begin to adapt transparent and accountable mechanisms in the management of projects and all policies at the Ministry of Education, so that it will not take, or it will not be or lie within the bosom of one agency to claim that A or B or C has been done or hasn't been done. But then the entire stakeholder community would have been aware that indeed this activity has been done. But beyond that, let me indicate quite clearly that we have a situation where an agency of the ministry, the head is appointed by the president. The same president also appoints the minister and appoints the board of the Ghana Education Service. We have raised issues about this arrangement within our laws for a long time. That whenever one appointment authority appoints the minister, appoints the board, that's the GS Council, and appoints the Director General, it creates the potential or the likelihood of accountability being blurred, or in some instances, impunity festering within the service or the institutions, because everyone is appointed by the same president. It is different if the minister appoints the heads of the institutions. In that case, there is much more loyalty or accountability to the minister. And so we have always argued that in the best practice worldwide, the executive appoints the minister. Then the minister will appoint the agencies under the ministry with the approval of His Excellency the President. Then His Excellency the President will hold the minister responsible for the delivery of the mandate of the ministry. In that case, the minister also ensures that the appointees under him deliver according to his mandate. So we think that if this system is changed, it will resolve most of these issues where you have appointees of the president, having subordination issues, or having acceding to the dictates of the mother ministry. It is very, very problematic, and we are happy if the president will take a second look, not only in the education sector, but all the social sectors, in our economy.
Interesting times ahead. I'm grateful, Kofi, for joining as well.